Greetings, Rebel fans. My name is Jason Kelly. This is the Let's Run podcast. I want to welcome you all to the show today as we are coming off of a very tough night at the Thomas and Mack Center. A night that you can tell it was Vegas Golden Knights night. It was a blackout. They had the Vegas Golden Knight drumline performing at halftime. They had the Vegas Vivas. And Chance, I think is his name, the Las Vegas Golden Knights mascot, was there. A DJ had come from that worked with the Golden Knights. A really cool partnership between the Golden Knights and the Runnin' Rebels in the UNLV athletic department. Big fan of that. I wish that we would do kind of a Raiders Day at UNLV football. I think that might be kind of fun to do for one of our home games. Maybe like to torch or something, the Raiders did make a significant investment into UNLV football this year, so I would love to see something similar with the Las Vegas Raiders kind of replicated for UNLV football. Although I do think it's important that UNLV football kind of stands on its own. I just think that's a good partnership, and there's a lot of cool opportunities there. But the school kind of pulled out all the stops for this home game. The student showing wasn't terrible. There were students there. The student section was the most full part of the arena. So the school had clearly done things to try and get people to come to the game. I saw people dressed up. The issue is the community support outside of the, students across sports are notoriously fickle about going to games. Even a school like Alabama for football has had issues filling up their student section. So the real place where schools make money is not with the students, it's with the community. The students are there to kind of build attendance and atmosphere, but you really have to get the local communities to support your team. And in terms of local community support, the Runnin' Rebels are at, it is at an all-time low. Banana Man's asking if I can readdress the locker room issues tonight. Yeah, I will. I will go into depth. Again, guys, I am not a source person. I don't want you to look at me as a person that can give you the inside about what's going on in UNLV football or basketball. But you do hear things, rumors, secondhand, third hand, through the grapevine. And I can tell you all that there are many people willing to talk about what is going on inside the basketball locker room at the moment, what's going on with the coaching staff. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. And again, you should just take it with a grain of salt. I'm not a reporter. I'm just telling you rumors because I want people to know. And because I hope that the show can be informative somewhat, so the crowd was subdued when we were walking up to the Thomas and Mack last night. I told myself, wearing black. The jokes about it being the Kevin Kruger funeral, which Don Barkley took a little bit of offense that I made a joke about. The guys dancing with the coffin, but it did have a kind of a somber feel to it, and I felt sad. The first half was competitive. The Runnin' Rebels kept it somewhat close. They were only down 4 going into the half, but they were basically behind, even if it wasn't by very much, the entire game. And I was talking to my mom as we were walking out of the game, and I said to myself, that game, there were points where the score was close, where we got it to within 4, but we weren't good enough. We weren't playing well enough, I should say. I think we had the talent to beat that Boise team, but we weren't using that talent well enough. I don't feel like we had a concrete game plan. And ultimately, I just didn't feel like we were going to win that game. Even if the Rebels had tied it up, and closed the gap completely, I wouldn't have felt like the Rebels were going to pull that one out because, Boise, they're having a little bit of a down year. We would love to be having the year that Boise's having. But Boise is not playing great this year. They're a good team. They've got veterans. They've got Dagenhart. They've got a great coach. But this wasn't a Boise team coming in firing on all cylinders, destroying the Runnin' Rebels. It was a team. Um, it was just a team that was better coached and better prepared, even on an off night that was able to defeat us. And that was discouraging, because I don't think, a lot of people like to dog on this team for effort. And I don't know that I would say it's an effort issue. I think the guys on the team are playing with effort. What I don't think they're playing with is an attention to detail. Now, you may think effort and attention to detail are synonymous, and that's certainly true. They are, but detail and paying attention to the little things, those are things that are set up by the coaches. Um, and I think that the team is playing with a lack of direction, with a lack of confidence, um, and just with yeah, the confidence really is the biggest word. I think the team is playing without confidence right now. They've gotten completely that Wyoming game, I think, was just an absolute shell shock for this, for this locker room. Losing that Wyoming game at home was ridiculous, and really was kind of the end of the season. Um, it was preposterous that we lost that game, and I feel like you know the players, instead of turning inward, kind of turned outward. They were blaming the crowd, which, coming off of two great wins against Utah State and San Diego State. I saw there were some complaints that we didn't have a good enough atmosphere to kind of hype the guys up. And that's not the players this year. It's not their fault necessarily completely. The issues with the crowd and the lack of interest in the program spans back 12, 13 years, not this year. Um, but that Wyoming game rattled their confidence. And I feel like we lost that Wyoming game. I feel like it was coaching. I feel like we didn't have a great game plan going into it. I do not like the way that UNLV was defending Wyoming in that game. And losing that game just killed our confidence. And then the next game, we play New Mexico. New Mexico, we played okay. We had our moments, but our star player, who's great and who we all love, came up short and missed a free throw that would have tied the game. And another ding to the confidence happened. Then we go. Then we go to Utah State. And we play an okay game, but I feel like Utah State didn't particularly play very well against us. They were just well coached and more disciplined than us. And they were able to beat us. And even though it was a close game, the confidence level went down again. And then finally, we lose at Reno. Again, free throw issues. There are consistency issues. And that Reno team is not very good. And losing to them was kind of a travesty. It really sucked. And another shot to the confidence happened. And then finally, it felt like a bit of a culmination. This Boise game, guys that were playing hard, that wanted to do the right things, but just didn't have the direction or confidence to do so. And ultimately, that run and rebel, even though the game looked close at points, that was just a game we weren't going to win, because we just aren't good enough. We don't play well enough together, and we don't have the leadership qualities that are necessary to win games like that. And so I'll briefly go over the stats here, because I know a lot of people didn't see my post-game show last night, that we did with the Burners, but I will share my screen here. We're going to go over the stats, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the macro level stuff here. So Boise was great. Not great, but Boise was fine. They were, only 28% from the 3-point line. I mean, failing to beat Boise when you hold them to 28% from the free throw line, only 7 made threes, is ridiculous. Cardenas and Tyson Dagenhart both played great. Javen Buchanan was there, at least Ken Palm's offensive or MVP of the game for Boise State. He looked excellent. I also thought RJ Keene and Andrew Meadow both put up good, stat lines as well. 8 of 8 from the free throw line for Andrew Meadow. I mean, look at that. For the Rebels, I won't spend too much time on Boise, but for the Rebels, it was, DJ DJ had 20 points, but he was only, 7 of 18 from the floor. That's a really bad shooting percentage, honestly. He was only 6 of 9 from the free throw line. Um, you got to make more than that. You got to make more free throws than that. It's become an issue. The free throw line and DJ. I think it's a confidence issue. I wouldn't say he has the yips or anything, but he definitely has a confidence issue at the free throw line. Jalen Hill, bad game, 2 of 5, 33 minutes. Only 3 rebounds. It was just we got nothing from Jalen Hill, and he had, um, with about a minute and a half to go, we had a 3-pointer that could have gotten the game to within one. So I think it was 2 or 3 minutes to go, and Jalen Hill got a wide open 3-pointer from the corner, and calling it an air ball would be generous. I mean, it was a heat-seeking missile to anywhere but the rim. It was a terrible shot, and Jalen Hill just didn't play very well. And defensively, he had some okay moments, but 3 steals for Jalen Hill is fine. But just an awful game for Jalen Hill. Bear Cherry with his best game in a while. That was nice to see. 19 points. Offensively, Bear Cherry looked like the guy that we saw early on in the season, and that was really nice. I was happy to see Bear play well. In only 30 minutes to get 19 points is excellent. Only 1 of 4 from the free throw line, though. That's kind of a struggle. And the big thing with Bear, the 19 points is great, but Bear did only secure 3 rebounds, which is ridiculous. As our starting center, you have to be able to get more than 3 rebounds. 2 turnovers from Bear weren't good either. Did have a couple of blocks. So overall, I would say it was a good Bear Cherry game. In fact, I would probably say he was our best player. But the rebounding numbers weren't good, and that was disappointing. Just an awful game from Julian Rishwain, who has been a very good player for the Rebels this year. I have liked the Julian Rishwain experience. Having him on our team has been awesome. But some nights he just doesn't have it. And the shots that we're asking him to take, if Julian Rishwain could take more catch and shoot 3-pointers, I think he would be better. Obviously he'd be better. But we are asking Julian Rishwain to take, step back 3-pointers consistently. And it's really just because the team doesn't seem to have good spacing and offensive, I don't want to say scheme, but offensive rhythm to generate open 3-point shots. Catch and shoot open 3-point shots for Julian Rishwain. Teams know that he's a good shooter on the scouting report. And so therefore, every 3-pointer that we're asking Julian Rishwain to take is a difficult shot. He did have 9 rebounds, credit to him for that, 4 assists, only 1 turnover. He did little things in the game, but we need him, I would love to see Bear Cherry get some of those rebounds, and I'd love to see some made threes from Julian Rishwain. Jaden Henley had his worst game as a Rebel, a donut, 0 points in 20 minutes. 0 for 7 from the field. Just an awful game for Jaden Henley, a guy who I actually like, and I think he's a talented player, but he's had a mediocre career, mediocre to bad career, and I think games like tonight are why he was available. On that DePaul team that he was on, that was an awful team. But Henley has legitimate skills. We did finally get more minutes out of Jalen Bedford, a guy who really should have been maybe even our leading scorer. I think the team's best version of itself is if DJ is the second or third leading scorer. DJ is a pure point guard, and Kevin Kruger has seemed to want to make him into a Bryce Hamilton or EJ Harkless role. When that's just not who DJ is. DJ is a point guard. He sets up his team. He plays in control of himself, and Kevin Kruger has miscast him as a Bryce Hamilton type. So Bedford, 11 points. I thought it was an okay game for Bedford. It was nice to see him play more. But again, 29 minutes, I think that's too little. Brooklyn Hicks, only 17 minutes is a travesty. Brooklyn Hicks, I think, is going to transfer after this year because he needs more playing time, and I think he's going to excel wherever he goes. It's ridiculous this guy is only getting 17 minutes. I hate it. He's too good. He's too skilled. He's too good of a player to only be getting 17 minutes. And he plays with too much heart, passion, and energy for a team that desperately needs it. And yet we're playing DJ 38 minutes. We're playing, these guys all these minutes. And I can't see why we don't play Brooklyn Hicks more. He's too good of a player. Pop and Jacob Benarby both got some minutes, not a ton. nothing to write home about. But I'm a big fan of both of those guys. Although Jacob has been probably a little disappointing from what I hoped he was going to be through the year. So yeah, I mean that's the ultimate result. The Rebels didn't play well. They look they look kind of lost. They look completely lost. Um, a couple of quotes. These are all from Banana Man, but I'll put them up anyway. If you comment on the show, I will put it up on the screen. So if you want to say anything or make a point or something, I'm more than happy to put it up on the screen. Banana Man says Vegas is becoming a sports hub, and the UNLV basketball program is getting left behind, and that'll happen until everyone does their share to bring relevancy to Vegas sports fan. Yeah, I mean, listen, the program is completely. I think the program's in its worst spot ever. I know, at least in my time as a fan. I know that there have been bad times too, but I think the program right now is worse than it was under Menzies. We're about the same at worst. Menzies was not great, but UNLV was kind of backed into a corner when they hired Menzies. We're probably about as at least as bad as we've been since we had to hire Menzies after the Chris Beard thing. That's probably about where we're at right now. Um, it was bad. Banana Man says Boise played sloppy and inconsistent for the most part, and a semi competent basketball team would have beat them last night. Yeah, if UNLV was a good team, they didn't have to be spectacular. All they had to be was solid, and they weren't solid. It seems like everyone's trying to boost their portal stock. Yep. This is not a hot take, Banana Man. Last year, the thing is, this roster this year, even with a great coach, it would have been a heck of an achievement for this roster to make the NCAA tournament this year. However, the roster last year was excellent. Keelan Boone, Caleb Boone, Luis Rodriguez, DJ Thomas, Jalen Hill. Um, you know, that team was good enough to make the NCAA tournament. It was. And if Kruger had made the NCAA tournament, even if he'd lost in the first round, the amount of patience that we would have for him would be exponentially greater. But last year he lost to Air Force at home, he lost to Southern at home, and that precluded them from making the NCAA tournament. And so that's why, UNLV basketball's, and Kevin Kruger's in the place that he is because last year was his time to make the NCAA tournament and he failed to do so. And so he just doesn't have the margin for error. And for that reason, that's why he's going to be gone. That's why he's basically already gone, actually, guys. We were 1 of 16 from the 3-point line. That's disgusting acts from the fans that have had their hands up all game. I'm not going to talk about that, but yes, 1 of 16 from the free throw line is not great. We're going to get some comments in from X Factor Rebel. Appreciate you, brother. So I guess I will take this time before we dive back into comments to talk to you guys about what's going on inside the locker room. And again, as I said earlier, this is rumor. I'm not a source guy. You should all, do not treat this as reported sourcing. But I can tell you that the locker room is pretty alienated. Kevin Kruger is alienated by himself from his coaches. I don't know how much. I don't know what the relationship is like between guys like Williams and Coach Peary. I don't know what that relationship is like right now with them and Kevin Kruger. I don't think it's very good. I think that Kevin has made decisions. I don't know if they're rotation decisions or game plan decisions, but Kevin is trying to coach this kind of on his own right now. He's trying like hell to fix this. And he's just failing, and that happens, man. Like some people take jobs that they're not qualified for. And yeah, I mean, and Brandon brings up a good point. I'd like to see Coach Peary as interim. Yeah, if the athletic director came to me, which he won't because he doesn't listen to me, and I'm not even saying that he necessarily always should, but I do think that I try to think about what I'm saying before I say it. But I would fire Coach Kruger tomorrow and put in Coach Peary as interim. We're late enough into the season, but there's still a little bit of time where Coach Peary can maybe get some time to rally the guys. Everybody knows Coach Kruger is going to be fired anyway. He doesn't have the friends or he's not as well liked as a guy like Dave Rice was. I don't think it would do the damage. This isn't going to happen, guys. You need to know that the program is not going to fire Coach Kruger right now. But Yeah, I would love to see Coach Peary as the interim coach. I think he has a better relationship with the players. I think he's a better head coach than Coach Kruger is. Um, and yeah, I would love to see that. And I think honestly, and this is a guess, I think a lot of the players would like to see that too. And that's sad because I don't think that the relationship between members of the staff is very good. I'm not sure how much they're talking to each other, how much they're spending time in terms of game plan with each other. I took a video. I didn't really want to post it because it felt kind of mean, but if you were watching last night, just watch the coaches during these games. These guys aren't talking to each other. They seem like they hate each other. I got to be honest with you. Kevin during the player announcements was standing completely by himself, basically under the basket, while all the other coaches were talking to each other on the other side of the bench. And it just wasn't. It didn't look good. Like I'll be honest. Like it looks like Kevin's a dead man walking, and his staff has abandoned him. And when you lose your staff as a head coach, it is game over. It is done. You are screwed when you lose the confidence of your staff. Um, I think that Coach Kruger specifically has had a very bad relationship. This is, I a lot of people have talked about this, but Coach Kruger and Jalen Bedford, I don't think have a great relationship. I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty obvious when you look at Jalen Bedford's playing time. I think Coach Kruger has grossly mishandled Jalen Bedford as a player. He had a lot of talent and a lot of skill and a lot of scoring skill. And Coach Kruger's insistence on making DJ basically do everything, I think, has really hurt this team. And I think I don't know what DJ's feelings are about this. Only DJ could tell you that. But I feel like, in my opinion, that it has held back DJ a little bit from achieving at the highest level he can. Coach Kruger's insistence on trying to make DJ like EJ Harkless and Bryce Hamilton has hurt DJ, in my opinion. And those guys had bigger frames. They were stronger. They were better athletes, honestly, than DJ is. Um, and frankly, it's not like UNLV was great when those guys were our best players either. I mean, we were okay, but especially the EJ Harkless team was not very good. And so very disappointing, very disappointing. I think that DJ's always been Kevin's guy. And I think that the rest of the roster, and I'm not saying that the players have anything, I don't think any of the players have anything against DJ. Don't get me wrong. And again, I'm talking about relationships that I'm not privy to. But the players aren't happy with Coach Kruger. And I think that's pretty evident. I think it's pretty evident. They don't look happy. That's why, like, when you see people say, well, if we fire Coach Kruger, we're going to lose all our players. Say that Eric Harper threw a Hail Mary, which he's not going to, and kept Coach Kruger around. I'm not sure any of his staff would come back with him. I don't think he would have I think he would have to build a new staff. I don't know about all of the staff, but some of them at least. It's bad. It's bad, guys. I got to be honest with you. And again, you'd have to talk to them specifically if you wanted perfect information about it. But not good. Not good at all. I believe, and again, this isn't sourced. I apologize that I keep having to say that, but I want to make sure you guys know. I believe that Coach Kruger is already gone. I don't think that even if UNLV made a miraculous run and won the Mountain West Conference tournament, I don't think that's enough to save Coach Kruger's job at this point. Anything short of like a Final Four run, like what happened at NC State, like that is what it would take to save Coach Kruger's job. And looking at this team and the talent on this team, that's obviously not going to happen. So he's done, guys. Like, there's no debate about it anymore. I don't think there's anybody on Twitter outside of Rebel Girl that is even arguing on his behalf anymore. And when your only ally is Rebel Girl, you are in a tough spot. I don't know if the school would ever consider letting him go before the final game of the season. I think at the earliest you could see him let go, it would be right before the conference tournament, maybe like a week before the conference tournament. You could see that. And Banana Man brings up a good point. he says hire a basketball GM for the program. A coach can't be trusted to manage NIL um, as it's being introduced to college basketball. Yes, and I think that Rebel Factor, RG, I'll just say RG. I think you kind of bring this point up too. If you look at the era where Doc Rivers was the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, he was also the GM of the Clippers. And coaches aren't always the best at handling money roster issues, paying players, deciding what players are worth on the open market. Um, hire a GM, a basketball GM for the program. Absolutely. This program needs somebody else at its head, outside of Kevin, another intermediary, just like the football program, to decide what players are worth and to handle that. And I think it's better to take money out of the head coach's hands completely and put that on somebody else. So the coach isn't looked towards for financial, financial stuff between the players. That's a route that a lot of schools are taking right now, and I think that it's one that UNLV has to implement into their near future. Um, there isn't any. I don't know if you're talking about money, but there is still money. Oh, okay. Sorry. You can tell that's the case with Kevin Kruger because there's no social media interaction um, between the official accounts. Yeah. It seems like the coaches are kind of going silent right now. That doesn't mean they don't want to win. I think if you talk to any of the assistant coaches, they would still prefer to win. They're not trying to sabotage Kevin specifically, but it's not good, guys. It's not good. Um, you have to have GMs now. Yeah, I think that a GM is great. I think you look at this roster and the way that the players have been paid on this roster. Um, it's I think that we've misallocated some of our money on certain players, and we should have had more money, for other types of players. I mean, like this team is just begging for somebody that can play center, anybody that can play center, and be a better rebounding kind of, full, well-rounded center. Because Bear is okay on offense, but he's okay on defense, but there's too many parts of the game that he struggles with. Pop is too young. Jacob Benarby, too young. Benarby should not be being relied upon for anything at all this year. And I don't understand why this program, does not have another center. And we have, I made a point about this with Isaiah Cottrell. We have Isaiah Cottrell on the team right now. And I don't know if he's dealing with some sort of injury right now, but he has never at any point in his career been a basketball player on a Division I roster that you could count on. And I like Isaiah Cottrell. But Isaiah Cottrell, if he's not a part of the roster, and last year, he was available and could not be used, and Kruger knows that he doesn't like him as a player, which anybody with eyes can see that Kevin Kruger does not like Isaiah Cottrell as a player. As a guy, I'm sure he's great. I like having Isaiah Cottrell on the team, but if you're going to have a guy on the team that you can't play at center, who's a junior, I mean, it's not like he's a freshman with untapped potential. We kind of know what Isaiah Cottrell is at this point. Why have him on the roster over the summer? Why not look for a guy like Carl Jones that we had last year that you can just put in and who can just be big and go play hard for a few minutes, maybe get a couple of fouls? You don't need much from the center position always, but what you do need is a big body that can grab rebounds and be big. And there's just not enough of that on this roster right now. And so I hate having a roster spot on a guy that's just not going to play. Where can we get a breakdown on who gets what NIL payments? So the NIL collectives are paying players cash payments generally, and that's based on donations to the NIL collective. There are still boosters that give money to this program. There are, they exist, and yeah. Sorry, just to finish that point, we need a Kem Birch, not an offensive mastermind. Yeah, Kem's great. So great that he played for 8 years in the NBA. That is exactly what we need. We don't need Bear Cherry to score 20 points a game. We need him to block some shots, dunk some balls, and get up and down the court. And if he can add that offensive, part to his game, that's great. But you have to be good at the other things first before you try and score 30 points a game. So back to the NIL payments. We don't know the exact amounts that each player is being paid. And there's arguments both for and against, being transparent about how much individual players are paid. Um, I hear Hill is overpaid. Yeah, that's a rumor, but I like Jalen Hill. I don't want to I don't want to dump on him because I think Jalen Hill's a good Vegas guy who I appreciate on the team and I think does a lot of good things. But yeah, I think that as an example, I think that certain players are probably being paid too much, and the NIL resources, which by the way are still like top three in the conference. Like I think last year that we had the most expensive roster in the conference. And so Kevin Kruger is given incredible basketball facilities, incredible recruiting advantages, scheduling advantages. It's not like Kevin Kruger isn't given the tools to succeed. He's given every tool to succeed. The only thing he's not given is fan support, which, the fan support was already bad by the time Kevin Kruger got the job. And that's unfortunate, but every other tool that he could have, he has. And he's being graded on a curve a little bit and he's failed, even if we had crowds, the thing is, even if you want to say that, the lack of community support is a killer for the program, like Kevin Kruger still has failed. There's no metric you can look at with Kevin Kruger and say that he's done a good enough job considering the advantages that he has. And so I guess I want to close out on that point. This might be unpopular, and I know that firing Dave Rice midseason has really been a stain on the program. And I'm not saying we need to fire Kevin Kruger tomorrow or even next week, but I was at the Thomas and Mack as the game ended last night, and I was looking down at Kevin. I was looking at the team, and I just felt sorry for Kevin. It sucks to put yourself out there and try your best, because I do believe Kevin has failed, but it hasn't been for a lack of effort. Kevin has tried. I just don't think he has the chops. Not everybody does, and that's okay. Not everybody has to have the chops. Kevin, you can't blame him for trying to get the UNLV job. He was absolutely right to look for opportunities to try and get the UNLV job when he went for it. There was a bunch of comments that were added that I did not see, so I apologize. So I'll go back to them after I'm done with this. But Kevin was right to try and go for the job. He was right to try and take the opportunity. It's time to move on. But I hated seeing Kevin stand there completely alone, with no support from his coaches. With his mom and his dad sitting in the arena, and with his family, and he's Rebel royalty, regardless of what happened with him as a head coach. I still, I still have a special place in my heart for that 2007 team, even though I was pretty young at the time. I still have a special place in my heart from that team, and I hate seeing him embarrassed like this because it feels embarrassing at this point. And so I'm not saying that UNLV should fire him tomorrow, but if the losing streak keeps up and everybody knows he's going to be fired anyway, it's not like with Dave Rice. With Dave Rice, there was hopes that by firing him, they could save the season or something. But this just feels embarrassing. And I don't want to come on here and insult the man and just because I like him, because I think he's a good dude. But this is just embarrassing. And the empty Thomas and Mack is embarrassing, and it's a stain. The Mountain West looks at UNLV and says, "What the heck are you guys doing? Why can't you figure this out?" And it's just embarrassing, and I felt embarrassed. Not that I won't continue to go to the games and love the Rebels with all my heart, but it's hard to watch, and I'm still going to keep watching, but it's hard to watch. So let's and so I would say if it's possible to fire him before the season, I would do it, man. And not because I think that that's going to fix the season, but just because I don't want to see Kevin Kruger standing up there having a panic attack on the sideline the whole time, trying frantically to save something that's not going to be saved. It sucks to see, and I hate seeing that for somebody who's a Rebel great. But the program needs to move on. It's over, and that makes the Let's Run coverage for the rest of this season kind of tough because I'm going to keep covering the team. I'm going to keep having podcasts about the team. But the fact that Kevin Kruger is done as the head coach of the UNLV program, that's going to loom over every single podcast that I do. And that's going to be hard not to address every single time But I also don't want to just sit up here and say the same things over and over again, because it's like, beat a dead horse. It's just like, you don't want to. It's already dead. Like, stop. The Kevin Kruger era. Everybody knows what needs to happen. Um, and the thing is, people still like that because they hate seeing something that they love, like UNLV basketball, so mishandled, and so it feels good to like be mad at Kevin Kruger. But it's not really going to do any good. So I will continue to talk. I'm obviously still going to continue to do the show, even though the season's kind of toast. But I'll go over some comments now. Bear and DJ learned how to produce points together. Rishwain and Henley missed their shots. Yes, Rishwain and Henley were both awful. This is from Robbie, by the way. Boise State's bench scoring doubled UNLV's. Yep, early on in conference play, UNLV was scoring a ton off the bench with Bedford and Hicks, and they were playing at a fast pace, and we seem to have moved away from that. The fans were very good to them. No distractions, no complaints. Yeah, I thought the fans that were at the Thomas and Mack were great. Bear's a 4 out of 5. They need to play pop next to him. I don't know that Bear moves well enough to guard fours, but I wouldn't hate it as an experimentation. We got our guy Martin Livingston, who came over and said, shout out to Martin. He came over and talked to me at the game yesterday. Again, feel free to reach out to anybody. I will do my best to try and meet up with anybody at the game. But he says, this is the same thing I said to my buddy at the game last night. Rishwain covered all the time. Yeah, he's always covered. Rishwain is always, taking heavily contested shots because the teams know that he's really our only shooter. Bedford should have been out there along with Hicks. Absolutely. If you look at the early games of the Mountain West Conference schedule, the San Jose State, Air Force, and Fresno State games that we went 3-0 in, both Bedford and Hicks were awesome off the bench, and that's the reason why we were blowing out those teams. The Masked Rebel said, everyone is going to transfer this year. We need somebody who brings the entire roster with him. That's actually a really good point. When looking for a new coach, I think you want to look for a guy like what Danny Sprinkle was at Utah State last year. Danny Sprinkle had come from Montana State, which is, I think they'd actually played UNLV when Danny Sprinkle was the head coach. I want to look at that because it was the COVID year. So TJ Otzelberger's last year, UNLV played Montana State. Was Danny Sprinkle the head coach? Yes. So UNLV actually played Danny Sprinkle in the 2021 season. And Danny Sprinkle already had guys like, like Great Osaboro and Darius Brown, who were awesome players for Utah State last year, that transferred from Montana State with him to Utah State. I think that's a very good strategy in looking for a new head coach. Look for guys that have established teams, and see if you can get them to bring their players with you so that you can start, hit the ground running start by hit the ground running. Martin says all they had to do was hit some damn threes last night and we win. Hitting only one. Yeah, that was rough. I've said this. DJ Thomas is not getting all the shots like he was. No, he wasn't. That's just because the roster. And you say it's confidence, but it's also roster construction. There's just not as much. Talent around him, so the shots are more difficult because of that. Ravi says Kruger is friendly and acknowledges me and other fans at every game. So does Peary. Yeah, Kruger's a nice man. Nobody denies that Kruger, and I actually really like Coach Peary. He and I have talked before, and he's a great coach, and I think he would have been an excellent head coach for the Running Rebels this year, which makes me sad. The coaching staff looked cohesive just over a month ago, and I saw them. Yeah, I mean, they looked cohesive during that stretch when we beat Utah State and San Diego State. But they're not anymore because there's a losing streak, and the coaches probably disagree about how the roster is being deployed. I'm not sure we can even beat Wyoming on the road this Saturday. Yeah, if we lose to Wyoming on the road, it's gonna be a rough time. But I don't think it's really gonna make a material difference with how this team is playing. No way. It could be a team policy not to post on social media. No, the coaches post on social media. Martin asked about the NIL amounts paid to players. We talked about that a little bit before. But yeah, we don't really know the exact amounts, but we do have a general idea. DJ makes the most. I think Jalen Hill makes the second most, but I could be totally wrong about that. This is a huge positive. Time to move forward and catch up to football. Yes, letting go of Kruger is a positive. The program will rebuild. And why not add Jefferson instead of ignoring him and his family? I think there was some pride. Honestly, the Jefferson thing was rough. There is a list already, and we just don't know it as fans. Yes, Kevin Kruger has all but been told. I mean, or you may even think that he has been told that he is no longer the head coach But the problem is because we don't want to fire him officially, we can't come out publicly and say that yet. But Kevin Kruger's already gone, and the administration has already been, vetting candidates. I don't want to say vetting, like they haven't been reaching. I don't know if they're talking to people yet, but they certainly um, already have a list. As AJ says here, they know who they're going to try and hire already. All right. Want to make sure. What are my thoughts about who we can get to replace Kevin? My favorite name is probably Russell Turner. I think he's a good candidate. But I'm going to trust the administration on this one. I'll have ideas. There's going to be lists for sure. I think that Harper's going to go after somebody with Power Four pedigree or tournament success. I'm going to try and generate a bank to try and pay him. And I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. The one thing that I'll say about Coach Kruger is that you have to understand that Coach Kruger was hired as the school was coming out of COVID. COVID was a rough time financially for every athletic department across the country. It was brutal, and Coach Kruger was seen as a budget alternative out of that time. Losing TJ Otzelberger really sucked out of that time, and fan interest was obviously at an all-time low because people hadn't gotten used to going back to sporting events during Kevin Kruger's first season. And so it really, wasn't until conference play during his first season that Kevin Kruger probably really in earnest started. And then Kevin's entire staff left him after his first year, which I think can tell you a little bit about Coach Kruger, that his whole staff left him after the first year. Coach Hartman left him. So, that was a tough way to start, but he still failed. And honestly, I think Kevin's a self-aware enough guy to maybe, I hope he is, to recognize that he failed here. So I want to make sure I get all the comments before we close it out. I think I got everybody. So, it's sad. It's depressing. We're going to keep talking about the team. We're going to keep covering it. Hopefully they can get a win on Saturday. So at least we have something positive to talk about. But yeah, I mean, if you're worried that the administration isn't going to fire Kruger or doesn't recognize that there's problems, the administration absolutely knows that there's problems. And they're going to fire him. And I don't think there's anything he can do to stop it now. I don't think there's a run that he can go on. I think this Boise State game, it probably was already over, but I thought this was, the last chance. As for the Pac stuff, I'm going to try and cut back on that. The administration has made it clear that, they've made their choice about the Pac-12 stuff, and I'm just going to let it play out. I disagree with that decision, but, I'm going to try and cut back on talking about it. But yeah. So guys, I appreciate you all checking out the show tonight. Were there any more comments? Every time the chat's weird, guys, because it doesn't give me the comments like in sequential order, which is pretty frustrating. Martin says, thanks for a great show. Yeah, I hope you guys had fun tonight. I'll be talking to you all again before the Wyoming game, and then we will talk after the Wyoming game as well. But I hope you guys have a great day. Have a great rest of your night. Spend lots of time with the people you love. Go Rebels, and let's run.